Coming up on today's Zestology, if you want a massive energy boost, something that will kickstart not just the next few days, but potentially the next few months, you need to listen on because that is what we are focusing in on today.
Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation.
Welcome back, and I hope you are well. And on this special Valentine's Zestology, something which, I don't know, is it romantic to do a serious fast on Valentine's Day? Maybe not. Maybe you can start tomorrow. And actually, I think fasting week starts tomorrow as well, which is why we've scheduled this podcast today. I'm walking down by the Thames in West London on a very windy day. I'm being buffeted by the wind, so I do hope the recording is okay. And today's guest is Don Gordon. And you might have heard me talk about ProLon and the ProLon fasting that I did last year. I recorded a little mini podcast every day for 5 days on our experience, and it was good fun. And both me and my wife Faith did it, and well, I have to say, felt incredible afterwards, as well as the old HRV stats on the Oura ring being seriously boosted by it too. ProLon is a form of fasting that is like a full fast, but you actually have about 600 calories. So your body thinks you're completely fasting, but you're not famished with hunger because you're eating just enough to feel okay. And Don is someone who knows all about ProLon and a great person to ask a lot of questions that I had on the matter. So, what is the point of fasting? Is it energy? Yes. Is it autophagy, which you'll hear more about? Yes. Is it all sorts of other benefits too? Yes. And to explain it, someone a lot more intelligent than I, a lot more plugged into it than I, Don Gordon is today's guest on Zestology.
Don, we're recording now. Welcome to Zestology. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm thankfully, Tony, I'm in good shape.
Good. And look, thank you so much, because before I did ProLon, this 5-day fasting mimicking diet, and we'll get into that, I had quite a long chat with you, and you were a great help. So thank you so much for being, I felt like I had my own personal consultant.
Well, that's great to hear, Tony. It's very gratifying. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's quite an experience, isn't it? Doing it, because obviously I've been intermittent fasting for ages, and I love that. But I'd never done anything over 24 hours. So to do sort of 5 days of fairly full-on fasting, I know you're eating a little bit, but not very much. It's quite full-on.
It is. It's what's common. It's more commonly known as a prolonged fast. So it's more than 2 days, or even 3. So some people can stick out, a couple of days water-based fast, maybe. But I think there's a real value around being able to do something in a prolonged way, because then you're able to get a sustained effect rather than very much short term. I think that if you're able to sustain something safely, and that's the key with safety, and tune in to certain characteristics of what Professor Longo talks about in his day fasting mimicking diet, I think has a great deal of value, and that's being played out in a lot of research that's going on right now.
Well, that's what made me want to do it. I read his book and I thought, I've a fancy bit of this. And my wife, Faith, and I did it at the same time, and she wanted to do it. And she'd sort of done a DIY version a few months previously and felt great afterwards. But we'll get into the sort of differences between the various types of versions you can do in a sec. But do you do it? Do you do this prolonged fasting?
Absolutely, yeah. I did it in September of this year, again, after having a break for maybe that's 6 or 7 months. or even longer in actual fact. So, I came back to it as a refresh.
Yeah.
Holding a whole sort of global or European fasting week. And I thought, I'm going to do the reset myself, and then I can talk with empathy to the people that are going through each day. And I thought, we've all been going through different variations of our own remote working or restrictive access to facilities, whether it be the gym or otherwise. So the normal habits maybe have shifted a little bit. I know my activity levels have dipped down, doing more remote work, which I've not been used to. So for me, I did feel a little bit fluffy.
Yeah.
I have to say. And so for me, that's quite a unique feature because I've never had a problem with weight. So it's not something that I would do for weight control per se, but just physiologically and just kind of mentally, I thought, I'm going to dial into this right now. And autumn, I think, is really a good time because it's before the winter sets in. So seasonally, I think good opportunity. So yes, I do it. And I did 3 consecutive cycles back in 2019 to measure the research that Walter Longo had done, because I wanted to see, well, we're all cynical, right? Does it really work? How does it work? What do we measure? I know you're big on measuring stuff. So I measured some biomarkers and body metrics. And I was really surprised by the speed and also the fact that this thing sustained the biomarker impact over time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And like you, I didn't do it for the weight loss. I did it for everything else. I thought it was a really good opportunity to see. I've read all the stuff about autophagy, and it's a topic that's come up on this podcast quite a bit. And I thought, well, that's sort of something that would be quite interesting. And also, like you, I did feel a bit fluffy towards the end. But actually, I found that afterwards, one of the major benefits was that tracking stuff, you talk about tracking. Well, my heart rate variability just went up and up and up for a few weeks after that. Just recently, it's starting to dip again. But I wonder if it was because of that, because in the last month, I've hit a sort of all-time record of heart rate variability. It was almost double what it was in the week before I did what was it you called it? So I know it's ProLon, but it's prolonged fasting.
Prolonged fast. Yeah, 5 day, which is 5 days. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because, I tell you what, I felt good and the heart rate variability was up, and perhaps that was down to sort of, clearing out all the sort of dead cells in the body and giving my body a bit of a reset.
I think that's a really, really hot topic, and it's a really good one to dial into that people aren't necessarily conscious of or aware of, Tony, because I recently did a presentation at this Congress talking about the physiological or the molecular effects around the fasting cycle and that whole aspect of cellular cleanup, if you will.
Yeah.
And what happens when you do a prolonged fast is that you'll find that heart rate goes down, blood pressure goes down, you maybe feel a little bit colder, because you're not having the normal amount of resources coming in from a metabolic perspective, food. But heart rate variability goes up. And the reason for that is you're tapping into what's called parasympathetic tone.
Right.
So you're dialing into the rest and digest aspect of things, which we quite rarely get into.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly snacking, or we've got food or certain levels of protein coming in, which is no bad thing. It's just that on a day-to-day basis, we're not pressured into abstinence from food at a certain level, because why? Why is if you can dial into parasympathetic tone, the brain in terms of neuroplasticity starts to do some interesting stuff because it's using ketones for fuel, right?
Yeah.
So preferentially, then it thinks, I can do some really cool stuff now. And that aspect of heart rate variability is a key marker for recovery in the body, right? For athletes, they're all into it. Heart rate variability. Am I able to train well today?
Yeah.
Because of a good state, or should I just step back on this particular high intensity program or this high intensity exercise that we do today until the next day, or to give myself space to fully recover because as you know, with sport and athletes, it's all about recovery.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And the heart rate variability is such a key element for me. It's, not just because I want to look after my heart, but it is clear that in almost every sort of single way that you look at it, getting your HRV up is a good thing. So I was sort of very appreciative of the fact that it did that. And I also think that for me, the parasympathetic element of things, as you mentioned, sort of, I am sort of quite a sort of type A, fairly sort of high stress individual, and just being able to switch off and relax is something that I actually find quite a challenge. So I think and I overeat as well. I don't overeat, but I love a big plate of food, and I don't really need to eat as much as I often do. And that's probably why I intermittent fast, because when I do eat, I eat big. But so all of that, just giving my digestion a bit of a rest probably helped as well with the HRV. And in general, I noticed that when I've had a light evening meal or I've missed an evening meal, my HRV will be up the next day.
That's really interesting. And the fact that you can dial into that from a tracking point of view with a particular method or tool that you've got, there are a number of apps out there, but you mentioned, I think, when we spoke in the past, the Oura Ring, for example.
Yeah.
It's 24/7 because it's just a ring that goes on the finger, maybe a bit pricey. So it's not accessible for everybody. But look, if you're looking for a Black Friday deal or for a Christmas present, I'd say to someone, say to the partner, here, I've got this really cool tool, rather than a Fitbit or whatever it might be. Why don't you get me one of these Oura Rings? Then I can dial into that. So
are you just sending out your own Christmas wish list right now?
Exactly. I'm sending out those intentions, aren't I?
I've got the sizing rings downstairs for the new one that's just been released, actually, which I'm very excited about. It's got 7 different temperature sensors on it, which sounds pretty cool. So, yeah. Right.
So, that does sound pretty cool. And but I think that, this whole aspect of recovery and the capacity to dial into it, athlete or not, gives the body a chance with a prolonged fast to go into ketosis and then do it safely because you're not triggering all those normal nutrient sensing pathways. And the key one is insulin-like growth factor 1, which is that pro-growth hormone.
Right.
Great bodybuilder, right? But if you're not, you don't want to be growing all the time. And what's really interesting to me is that once you reach peak height, you don't grow anymore.
No.
You might grow in a different area. So it could be visceral fat around the organs, but that's not beneficial from a health perspective, from a cardiovascular perspective. So how do you stop this growth in a good way? So levels of protein or carbohydrate or sugar, whatever it might be, if you're able to just have a break, and I think a metabolic reset is... if you try and do it yourself, you kind of can, have a go. But the power, I think, of maybe having everything coming in a box delivered for you, 5 individual boxes, add some water, open up a packet, is uber convenient. And I think fast-paced, consumerist market, convenience is really, really important for people, isn't it?
Yeah, I need to ask you about that, actually, because I know that I know you do a bit of work for the company, so you might have to toe the company line a bit, but I know you're also in your own right a very well-known health expert and expert in nutrition and everything else. And I think that, one of the things I sort of wondered when I did the ProLon was, and I did 5 little mini podcasts for anyone who wants to go back and have a listen. I did sort of like a daily diary, and my wife did a couple of them as well. We sort of recorded it in the evenings when we were feeling sometimes sort of euphoric and sometimes fairly low energy. And as you say, in some of them, you sort of just add water. It's like a posh cup of soup, really. A very, very delicious posh cup of soup, but a posh cup of soup all the same. And then sometimes you get a few crackers and a delicious nut bar and some teas and some vitamins and that sort of thing as well. And one of the things we did wonder, Don, is could we do this on our own? And I think the answer is, you tell me what you think, but I've sort of looked into it and I've sort of thought we probably could, in terms of the amount of calories. It'd be very hard to get the exact macronutrient ratio, so sort of fats to carbs to protein and everything else. And I think that's probably part of what Volta Lungo considers to be important. But on the upside, it would save us, a couple of £100 to do it ourselves. So what do you think about that?
Well, I've been asked that question a lot from consumers and from clients as well, and it's a tough one because that Nutri technology. So the ratio and the design is really 15 years plus of research into it. So how do you distill that if you're just me or you, or even if you're a professional like me? Look, it's 10% protein, 45% carb, 45% fat.
Yeah.
But the combination of the fats emulsifying the sugars that's in that L bar, for example. So you've got 8 grams of honey. How do you get that to be low GI? So get a sustained release. Well, you combine it with the fats, and the fats in the right ratio. And the same with those starches. Well, they're low GI, just so you can sneak in underneath the radar and still stay in a fasted state, but not tip over so you come out of ketosis. That's the challenge. And look, I try to do similar designs in terms of a nutritional program for people. And it's challenging. You can have a go, and I think that you can get close to it. But I think that it's a challenge because it's up to the individual in terms of their time, their preparation, their skills in a soup together.
Yeah.
How do you get, just the right cook enough for just 2 people or 1 person? No, if you've got a family. So there's lots of dynamics at play.
It's a lot easier, isn't it, with all the boxes, for sure.
Absolutely. But yes, you could tune in if you had A, the time, B, the experience, and C, the inclination. So for some people, yes, I mean, there are hundreds of people trying to do it all over the world. Or they'll say, oh, it's just do a water-based fast. Well, the water-based fast is tough. I've done it. I've done a 3-day water-based fast. And, if you've got mental toughness as I have, then it may be okay. But 95% people who try water-based fast are gone in 24 hours later. It's like, oh, it's too much.
Yeah.
So, and then you've got to think about preserving lean tissue, preserving. So this is a really key aspect, I think, and maybe benefit of having, the right sort of macros in there. And also the multivitamin that you get with the plan, because it's got certain amino acids in. So there is one of the little nuances as well. Those amino acids, the methionine, L-cysteine, those are important for detox pathways. So the B12, the B group vitamins, and those amino acids, detoxing is an important characteristic from a cellular perspective and what's going on when you fast. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's because when I did it, one of the side effects was, I don't want to go into too much detail, Don, but certainly my digestion was quite altered over the 5 days. And I take that as a sort of a good sign. But it was. Were you constipated?
Right. No, the other way.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so we're getting into the.
It was. Yeah, we're getting into the nitty gritty, but I mean, it was quite a factor. And I sort of wondered, firstly, is that detox? Or secondly, is it just because I'm having powdered food and I normally have, sort of if I made it myself, it would be fresh or frozen and that might be better. But I think, to be honest, there was quite a bit of detox going on, and that was part of the thing, and perhaps having less fiber than usual as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's completely different, Tony, aren't they? So I think, it is very much a personalized thing. And bio-individuality varies hugely across individuals and gender and so forth. So people come to their journey or to their retreat of 5 days with different personal history.
Yeah,
nuances from a gut health perspective. Is Tony a good methylator? A good
methylator?
A methylator.
Yeah. So I'm very poor methylator. That's for certain. Yeah.
And this can be genetically predicated. So you've got a little polymorphism or a little SNP going on where you haven't got that particular gene that codes for detox P450 enzymes, I think, then, it can be problematic. You probably don't tolerate alcohol very well if you're a poor methylator.
Very poorly, absolute lightweight and feel dreadful after drinking these days.
So isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But some people get constipated with ProLon, and I think that's down to hydration.
Yeah.
4% of the water that we get is in the food that we eat. And about 25% is electrolytes. So if you haven't got the electrolytes that's in the food, then that's, again, is a factor. So hydration is a key thing when you're fasting, and having electrolytes at a sufficient level to make sure that things are, you've got movement through the colon, and you're getting cellular activity in the right way.
Yeah. Interrupting this podcast for one moment to tell you that today's podcast partner on Zestology is Magnesium Breakthrough, something which I take religiously twice a day, once after lunch and once in the evening just before bed. And I used to take so many different forms of magnesium, but I don't bother anymore because this one has 7 different forms of magnesium all in one tablet. And I used to use sprays and all sorts as well, which got very sticky at night. It wasn't good. But Magnesium Breakthrough brings all the magnesiums into one convenient bottle, and you're getting all the enzymes that you need. For me, it's brilliant for that sort of slightly restless leg syndrome thing you get at night, or when you're feeling a little bit agitated or not totally relaxed. It's great for relaxation and stress. It really helps for sleep. In fact, I wouldn't even go to bed and go to sleep without taking it now. Great for the muscles after a workout too. And it is all round one of those ones that is just an absolute must have for me. And I use my own discount code. So you can use the code Zestology10 on both the UK site and the US site. And if you go to magbreakthrough.com/Zestology, that code will work. So Zestology10, and head to magbreakthrough.com/Zestology. That is it. Back to the show. I think I found the most interesting thing, or one of the most interesting things, and I very much liked the sort of physical detox, and I think that was, that has provided continuing benefits. And as I said, my wife loves it as well. She did one previously, which was a DIY one, and she credited a lot of health improvements to that as well. Not that she was unhealthy before, but she really felt good after it. So I think we're definite fans in this house. But one of the things I found so hard was the emotional way that I lean on food. And I found it so hard to sort of have lunch, which might have been a soup, and on some days you sort of have a bit more earlier in the day, and some days you have a bit more later in the day, and it might be 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, all I've got is a powdered soup until breakfast tomorrow. And it's sort of, it wasn't actually that I was hungry, it was that I look forward to eating food. So there's definitely an emotional component there. It wasn't physical.
Yeah, and that's really insightful that you say that, because I think that is one of the key challenges for so many people is the mindset. So I would say to people, listen, prepare yourself before you do the fast. Think about, tapering caffeine intake, maybe look at getting smaller portions in, practice a couple of days of intermittent fasting or 2 meals a day rather than 3 before you start your program. And then mentally, you're beginning to dial into the zone. It won't be so much of a shock, let's say. So I think that preparation is absolutely key. And then what's also important is the awareness.
Yeah.
Into that, being an NLP guy, that kind of is food an anchor.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
For us, is it something that we gravitate towards to feed an emotional state or reward system that we've historically built up? And so what's at play is interesting. And I noticed when I first did my first ProLon, I thought, oh, I'm a bit hungry because I'm used to eating more food.
Yeah.
As training all the time. And so the portion sizes were kind of like, oh, yeah. So I did experience hunger. I did have a few withdrawal headaches, although I take green tea and not so much coffee. But it was really interesting for me to experience those things. And then, afterwards, I thought, well, maybe I don't actually need that much food. Volume or portion control came into play. And I actually found myself having a little bit more gratitude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Around what I was getting. That Choco Crisp bar that you have on the day in the evening, it's kind of like, that becomes like really, really.
Absolutely.
On day 5. And so you think, Yeah, so that reaction, so observing those sort of behavior, those sort of responses, I think is a fun and interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
Are we then, what I did find, and this was absolutely one of the key takeaways for me, is if you're going to do some form of fasting, what's the outcome? What you're really looking for? And for me, I found that, the cognitive functioning was great, yes, because I'm using ketones for fuel. But I think the gratitude was also, but it freed up a lot of mental energy that I, as a practitioner and as a nutritionist, I'm always thinking about food, not so much for me, but for other people. So I've always got to I'm always thinking about macros and fat proportions and this and supplements or whatever it might be. I didn't have to think about any of that at all.
Yeah.
The box, take something out of the box, and I didn't have to think about its composition. I knew it was safe. I knew that it was going to get a good outcome for me. So I embraced that. And subsequently, I think my journey has been almost one of go.
Yeah.
A lot of mental capacity should be kind of just shifted off these shoulders to this is something that I can deal with well.
That's good. Yeah. No, I think actually probably the only time I was genuinely physically hungry, not mentally hungry, was the last day. And I know for a lot of people, the last day is the day that you're sort of coming out of it. But I remember the Friday evening, I sort of thought, I'm hungry. And then the Saturday morning was the day that we'd finished. And I mean, it was quite an unambitious first meal, but I had a boiled egg and a salad and some olive oil, and it was just wonderful. And every mouthful was just so delicious. So what you said there about the gratitude, I have to say, I don't think it's lasted that much, but I mean, I do try and be conscious while I'm eating, but there was definitely a period of a week or two where every bite of every meal I was super present on. So look, it's great getting the insights on it all with you, and I think there's a massive role to play for people with ProLon and intermittent fasting and fasting in general. There's just so much compelling research, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And look, there's dozens of studies going on right now, and there's dozens more planned as well. So I've been, looking at it in alongside performance. There's no research in humans out there now, but it's in progress. And so I know that there's a lot of studies being done in the area of oncology and in metabolic syndrome and other autoimmune conditions. So, but the evidence you say is compelling. And if you go to, clinical.gov website, there's 13,000 studies that have been completed on fasting.
Yeah.
So it's really, really popular, I think, and becoming more so it's certainly in integrative medicine circles and in functional medicine circles. And I think that we're seeing a shift from prescribing lifestyle medicine to people, and fasting has very much got a place in that, in the room and in that space. And I think that's only going to become more and more evident. And we always look for that evidence, right? So yes, the trials that are done maybe small scale, but I think there are some coming which are going to be on a much larger scale. So from a population study perspective, I think it's going to be interesting to watch the space. And look, even if you look at certain websites, whether it be Diabetes UK and type 2 diabetes, a lot of people, Dr. David Unwin from Newcastle University, Dr. Michael Mosley, Ron Chatterjee, they're all talking about using restrictive calorie intake to manage certain aspects of health, because they're seeing it working with their patients. Yeah. So I think always you get the cutting edge people are ahead of the curve, but I think it's, that a lot of the low carb approach from pre and post-diabetic people is really coming into sharp focus and view from an anecdotal perspective. And I've seen some interesting discussions going on some of those networks around the benefits that it's having for people who are really, challenged from a health perspective. So it's an exciting space to be occupying.
Yeah. Certainly is. Don, we're almost out of time, but I need to ask you, what is one book you'd recommend and one tip for living with more energy? It might be fasting or it might be something else. So one book and one tip, what are you going to go for?
Well, there's so many, and I'm constantly reading, but I did dial into one particular book just recently and speaking about energy. And it was this one here.
Don't embarrass me, Don. I mean, I'm not embarrassed. I'm actually very flattered.
It's by somebody called Tony Wrighton. It talks about radical new ways to revitalize and recharge your life. So I read this and I thought, oh, there's some tips in here. And I found a lovely little index, and I started to use the Google Sheets to record some stuff. Yeah. Now I use stuff for recording various features for clients. Maybe supplements, maybe energy levels, maybe stress levels, maybe sleep and those sorts of things. So I think you and I both know that what gets tracked gets done. So I think having accountability, if not with yourself, with the person you're working with, coach-wise or whoever, and having someone that you can get feedback from. So it's really, from a feedback perspective, I think some of the tools in the book, this particular book, for me, I found it really useful. And so I'd be saying to people, get a hold of a copy of that. There's some other ones from Wrong and Chatterjee, The Stress Solution, which I think is a great book too. But I think that my most recent read has been this one. And so, I'm going to say to folks, why not get a hold of a copy? You might just put some tips in there.
Oh, well, Don, very, very kind of you. Thank you very much. So, and very useful stuff based around tracking as well. Well, thanks for reading it. I appreciate it very much. And obviously the ProLon, we'll put links to ProLon. I think I've got discount codes somewhere for ProLon, so I'll put them in the show notes. But what about you? Where can people find more about you and what you do in Elite Wellness?
Well, I'm happy for you to post up my email address. People can contact me through there. I've got a different website which I'm working on at the moment, which is based around food intolerance testing. But I think, if people want to get in contact with me, simply email, I'll pop up, and then if they want support in any way, then I'm happy to jump in and help in any way that I can. So, you post up my email address, happy for people to drop me a line, and we can strike up the conversation from there.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, look, it's great to talk to you. Hopefully we'll get to meet in person, maybe at the Health Optimization Summit next year, something like that. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think that could be one to look out for sure.
Good. All right, brilliant. Well, look, great to talk to you. Thanks for all your work in this area as well. And I might call you for another little sort of private little chit chat before I do ProLon again.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and a great
thank you.
Great
Appreciate
honor to be with
it.
you here today.
That is it for today's Zestology, and my podcast partners this week are someone that or a company that would be useful to get involved with if you are doing an intermittent fast or a fuller sort of ProLon type fast, because you need to replenish those minerals and vitamins, and you need to replenish the magnesium, one of the absolutely most important minerals that you need to focus in on. And Magnesium Breakthrough are my podcast partners today. Delighted to have partnered up with them because I use Magnesium Breakthrough myself, and you can head to magbreakthrough.com/zestology to get 10% off using the code Zestology10. That code works on the worldwide site and also on the UK site as well. So Zestology10 for 10% off Magnesium Breakthrough. All 7 forms of magnesium. And I take 2 a day. I take 1 in the day, so I've taken 1 already today. And I also take 1 at night, just before I go to sleep. magbreakthrough.com/zestology are my podcast partners today. That is it for today's podcast. You have a romantic Valentine's Day. I think tonight we are cooking some frozen fish, which was frozen at sea, and is therefore low histamine. Very exciting. That's what I call true romance. Because if you go out on Valentine's Day, it's just the worst day of the year to go to a restaurant, isn't it? There's all sorts of couples sitting, looking slightly awkward, paying double the price of normal, and it's just not a great experience on Valentine's Day. I'd rather go out tomorrow. Oh, I hope that doesn't make me not much of a true romantic, but there you go. Thanks for listening to Zestology, and see you next time.